In this video, we're going to learn about the sum-if formula and look at the difference between absolute and relative cell references. Let's get started. Moving right along, we head back to our cleanup tab, and now we're going to sum all of the expenses that just involve food. And of course, we could again do this by hand, but there is no need. We're going to use the power of the sum-if formula. We always start with an equal sign to let Google Sheets know that we are entering a formula, and then we'll enter sum if. Open the bracket. And again, remember that if you forget how to use the syntax, you can always click this blue question mark to open this up, and it gives you what you need in order to make the formula work. Anything that you see in square brackets means it's an optional argument. So first it's asking us, well, what do we want to sum? What are the things that we want to reference? So first we want to reference all of the categories here. So let's start from B2 until the end of the spreadsheet. Next is the criterion. So what are the things that we're summing? We're not summing all the categories, we're just summing the food. So let's go ahead and reference cell G2. And then where are we going to sum the numbers? Well, there are no numbers in column B, so we're going to have to reference all the tie bot values in column D, starting with cell D2 and then until the end of the spreadsheet. Close that up and press enter. We're going to ignore autofill for now, and we'll just look to see if this roughly matches what we have here. So if I'm just roughly looking at our food expenses, does 4,000 baht seem reasonable? So you can double check your work. Yeah, I would say it looks quite good. So in order to make this formula work, I am not actually going to simply drag it down. And you'll see why by actually looking through the cell references. So notice here already that the range selected in the next column over is not the entire column B. And this can get tricky as we go further down the list. So you can see now we're starting at B4, so we're missing some categories. So this can make our spreadsheet inaccurate. So what we want to do instead is in that first cell, in cell H2, where we initially set up our formula, we want to lock this range in and not have it change. So that's called an absolute cell reference. And to lock in this range, all I have to do is put dollar signs in front of the column name and the row number. So same thing over here. I'm not locking in G2 because I do want my summary table to reference debt for the next row and other for the next one and so forth. So this is going to be the relative cell reference, which will be subject to change. But the other thing that will not change is the column in which we are grabbing the values in order to sum. So this will be locked in as well. Again, we add a dollar sign in front of the column letter and the row number. Okay, now we press enter, and now when we use the fill function, we can see in the formula bar that our columns B and D are now locked in because of those absolute values, the absolute cell references. But if we go down, the things that are changing is that middle argument here where it's referencing what the thing is we want to sum. So for example, in this cell here, these two cells, we're just summing the total housing costs. Let's practice the sum if formula again, this time for column I. So again, we start with sum if, open bracket, and we can click this blue question mark if we don't remember what we need to sum. So the first is asking us, what is the source range that we want to gather? So everything in column B, that's our categories. And I want to lock that in with absolute cell references. So when I use the fill feature, that gets locked in. Next, I want to sum only the food expenses. And where do I want to gather the numbers from? I want to gather the numbers from column E this time, not D, because I'm looking at the Canadian dollar. So we'll start with cell E2. And again, let's lock that in with the absolute references, colon, all the way till the end of column E. Lock that in with another absolute reference, close the bracket, press enter, and yes, this time we can autofill because we'll notice that those values adjust in our input bar. Okay, beautiful. Final thing here, let's just make sure our formatting is in line with the rest of our spreadsheet. So I'm going to reformat these values into Thai baht and these into Canadian dollar. Now that we've used the sum if formula to find the total expenses for each category, let's now use the sum formula to find the totals for the month, as well as add borders to our summary table. Going back to our cleanup tab, we're going to skip this row, and that's because what the unique formula does is it lists every unique row in the source range. And so if we look in the column B that we've referenced, the blank cell is also a unique entry. So that's why we have to skip this cell and make our total in the cell below. Here, we are going to enter just a basic sum formula. And the range that we want to sum is all the cells from H2 until H8. Close the bracket and press enter. We can do the same thing for a Canadian dollar, or we can just actually use the fill feature to drag this formula across. Notice that these are not formatted in the correct currency, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and last step is to add a summary table. So I'm going to select all the cells from G1 until I10, and I'll head over to this borders tool and select outside border. To make this look a little bit nicer, I'm going to highlight this bottom row, and I will want to select top border only. And I'm going to change the line style to the double line here. So that's a classic indication that right where you have the double line, we've got the total. So the total spendings for this month in Thai baht was about 87,000, and that's equivalent in today's dollars to about 3,200 Canadian. Fantastic work. You've almost made it to the end of this mini series. In the next video, we're going to be learning about the filter feature on Google Sheets and learn how to create a chart. Both of these tools will be helpful to visualize our expense tracking data. Thank you for watching.